the knife was still in my hand, frosting clinging to the blade, when the room went dead silent. I had only passed the first slice to a shy boy to help him feel included. A tiny gesture to keep the peace, but my sister Blair never missed an opening. "Selfish like your mom," she announced, her voice cutting through the chatter like glass. It wasn't just an insult, it was an inheritance I had spent 30 years trying to outrun. The fluorescent lights of the Larkhaven community room hummed with a sound that usually drove me crazy. But today, I chose to hear it as the sound of victory. I stood on a folding chair, taping a stream of blue crepe paper to the acoustical ceiling tile, trying to ignore the way my hands were trembling. It was my son Leo's 7th birthday. 7 years of keeping him safe. 7 years of building a world where the floor did not drop out from under him. 7 years of proving to myself that biology was not destiny. I climbed down from the chair and surveyed the room. It was humble. The Larkhaven complex was a solid, working-class development where single parents and young families traded space for safety. The community room smelled faintly of floor wax and old coffee, but I had transformed it. There were silver stars hanging from the ceiling, a banner that read, "Blast Off" in bold letters, and 3 tables covered in galaxy-themed tablecloths I had bought on clearance 6 months ago. It was perfect because it was ours. My friend Maris was setting up the juice station in the corner. She caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up. "You did good." "Kennedy," she said, reading my mind. I exhaled, smoothing the front of my dress. I felt good. I felt steady. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my sister. "Blair, running 5 minutes late. Traffic is a nightmare. Don't start without the cool aunt." My stomach tightened. That familiar cold stone of dread dropped into my gut. Inviting Blair had been a debate I held with myself for 3 weeks. On one hand, she was my only living family. Our mother had been gone for 4 years, and our father had left the picture before I could memorize his face. Blair was the only other person on Earth who carried the specific, heavy DNA of our childhood. On the other hand, Blair was a hurricane who believed she was a sunbeam. I had set boundaries. I had been firm. I called her 2 days ago, my voice practiced and calm, and laid it out. "Leo is really excited." I had said, "So we are keeping it focused on the kids. 2 hours tops. No alcohol. Blair, I mean it. No big speeches. Just pizza, cake, and playing." Blair had laughed. That tinkling, dismissive sound that made me feel like I was being uptight. "Relax, Kennedy," she had said. "I know how to behave at a kid's party. I'm not a monster." Now, staring at the text, I tried to believe her. I wanted Leo to know his aunt. I wanted him to see a family that showed up for each other, even if it was a performance. I wanted to model effort. I put the phone away and turned to the door as the first guests arrived. The next hour was a blur of noise and sugar. Leo was in his element. He was wearing a shirt with a rocket ship on it, his hair sticking up in the back, running circles around his friends from school. Seeing him laugh, truly laugh with his head thrown back and his eyes crinkled shut, was a balm to my soul. It was the only validation I needed. I was pouring apple juice for a toddler when the double doors swung open with a theatrical flair. Blair had arrived. She didn't just walk into a room. She announced herself to it. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my car payment, and dark jeans that looked tailored. She looked stunning, polished, and completely out of place in the scuffed community room. "Happy birthday to the little man," she cried out, her voice projecting to the back wall. Heads turned. The parents, mostly wearing hoodies and sensible sneakers, looked at her. Leo stopped running and looked at me. "Go say hi to Aunt Blair," I said gently, nudging him forward. Blair dropped to one knee, ignoring the dust on the floor, and opened her arms. Leo went to her, but I saw the hesitation. He didn't know her well. She was the aunt who sent expensive, impractical gifts late, not the aunt who sat on the floor and built Legos. "Look at you," Blair said, squeezing him. "You are getting so big. I brought you something huge, but your mom said I had to leave it in the car until later." She cast a look at me. a playful glance that carried a tiny, sharp hook, a subtle way of saying, "I wanted to spoil you, but your mother is the fun police." I kept my smile fixed. "Thanks for coming." "Blair," I said, "there is pizza on the back table." "I'm good," she said, standing up and brushing off her knees. "I ate before I came." Carbs, you know. She moved through the party like royalty visiting a village. She charmed the dads, complimented the moms on their shoes in a way that sounded slightly surprised, and generally sucked the oxygen out of the room. But she didn't cause a scene. She didn't smell like wine. She was behaving. I let my guard down. Just a fraction. The games wrapped up. A chaotic round of musical chairs and a scavenger hunt for foil-wrapped moon rocks I had hidden around the room. The energy was high, chaotic, and joyful. "Okay, everyone," I called out, clapping my hands. "Who is ready for cake?" The cheer from the kids was deafening. I herded them toward the main table. The cake was my masterpiece. I had baked it myself. A 2-tier chocolate cake covered in dark blue buttercream, speckled with edible gold stars. I had spent 4 hours the night before piping the frosting, making sure the edges were sharp. I lit the 7 candles. The room dimmed as Maris hit the lights. We sang. The voices were off-key and loud, a beautiful cacophony. Leo's face glowed in the candlelight, his eyes wide, reflecting the tiny flames. He looked so happy. He looked safe. "Make a wish." "Baby," I whispered. He squeezed his eyes shut, paused for a dramatic second, and blew. The smoke drifted up, smelling of wax and burnt sugar. The lights flickered back on. "Cake! Cake!" the kids chanted. I picked up the knife. It was a large silver server I had brought from home. Now, here is where the logistics of a children's party clash with the expectations of adults. I knew these kids. I knew that little Noah, a timid boy with glasses from Leo's class, was terrified of being pushed. He was standing at the very edge of the table, looking overwhelmed by the chanting. I also knew that Sophie, the girl in the pink dress, had a severe dairy allergy, and I had a special cupcake set aside for her on the main platter, right next to where I was cutting. I needed to diffuse the chaos before the frosting frenzy began. I didn't cut the first wedge for Leo. I cut a clean line through the side of the cake. Plating a piece quickly, "I'm going to give this one to Noah," I said cheerfully, handing the plate to the shy boy who looked relieved to have something to hold. "And Sophie, here is your special star cupcake." I turned back to the cake, lifting the knife to carve the massive, official corner piece for the birthday boy. It was a matter of seconds, a small, tactical delay to ensure every child felt seen. Then Blair's voice rang out. It wasn't a whisper, it was a projection, pitched perfectly to cut through the chatter of 20 people. "Typical Kennedy," she said. She laughed, but it was a dry, hard sound. I froze, the knife hovering over the blue frosting. I looked up. Blair was standing with 2 other mothers, a plastic cup of water in her hand, shaking her head with a look of pity. "What?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop it. Blair smiled, but her eyes were cold. "Dead things. You just can't let him have his moment." "Can you?" she said, loud enough that the parents near the wall stopped talking. "You always have to control the distribution. You have to be the one deciding who gets what and when." "Blair," I said, my voice low. "Not now." She didn't stop. She took a step forward, her expression shifting into a mask of tragic insight. "It is just sad," she said to the room at large, as if narrating a documentary. "It is so selfish. You are selfish, just like your mom." The air left the room. It was a specific kind of silence. The parents looked at their feet. The kids, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure, stopped chanting. The reference to our mother wasn't just a comparison. In our family, in our small-town history, it was a grenade. Our mother, Elena, had been a woman of immense charm and immense destruction. She was known for making scenes, for making herself the victim, for consuming the emotional energy of every room she entered until she died young, leaving a mess of debt and bad memories. To be called like her was the ultimate curse, and Blair knew it. I stood there, the knife trembling slightly in my hand. I felt the heat rise up my neck, a flush of humiliation that made my skin prickle. I looked at Leo. He was looking at me, his smile faltering. Confused. He looked from me to his aunt, trying to understand why the party had stopped. The choice was laid out before me in that split second. I could scream. I could throw the knife on the table and tell Blair exactly what I thought of her hypocrisy. I could list the money I had loaned her, the times I had covered for her, the years I had spent cleaning up the messes she and Mom made. I could burn it all down. But if I did, Leo would remember his 7th birthday as the day Mommy screamed at Aunt Blair. He would remember the fear. I gripped the handle of the knife until my knuckles turned white. I forced the corners of my mouth up. It felt like I was lifting 1,000 pounds with my facial muscles. "Okay," I said, my voice cracking only slightly before I found my strength. "Who is next? The birthday boy needs his slice." I looked directly at Leo. Ignoring Blair completely, I turned my back on her. "Big piece or medium piece?" "Leo?" I asked, injecting a manic amount of cheer into the question. "Big," Leo chirped, though I saw the shadow of worry in his eyes. "Coming right up." I cut the slice. I put it on a plate. I handed it to him. "Does anyone want ice cream?" I called out to the other parents. The adults, bless them, understood the assignment. They jumped in. Me, I want chocolate," one dad shouted, overly loud. The tension didn't vanish, but it was buried under a sudden avalanche of forced normalcy. The noise returned. The kids ate. The party moved on. I moved through the rest of the hour like a robot. I served cake. I cleaned up sticky napkins. I accepted compliments on the frosting. I kept my back to Blair as much as possible. She stayed for another 20 minutes, hovering near the exit, checking her phone, looking bored now that the drama had failed to ignite an explosion. When she finally came over to say goodbye, she tried to hug me. "Great party. Ken," she said, using the nickname I hated. Really sweet. I didn't hug her back. I just nodded, my hands busy tying a trash bag. "Drive safe." "Blair," I said. She smirked, a tiny twitch of her lips, and walked out. By 4 o'clock, the last guest had gone. The room was quiet again. Save for the rustle of garbage bags and the hum of the refrigerator, Maris was helping me sweep. Leo was sitting in the corner, playing with a new Lego set, humming to himself. He seemed okay. He seemed unscathed. Maris stopped sweeping and leaned on the broom handle. She looked at me, her expression grim. She didn't just snap. "Kennedy," Maris said softly. I looked up from the table I was wiping. "What do you mean?" Maris hesitated, then sighed. I heard her talking to Sarah and Mike before the cake. She was priming them. She was telling them how hard it is to watch you parent, how you always make everything about yourself. She used those exact words. Everything is a performance for Kennedy. I felt a wave of nausea. She was setting the stage. Maris said, she wanted people to agree with her when she said it loud. I closed my eyes. It wasn't just a slip of the tongue. It wasn't a momentary lapse of judgment caused by stress or jealousy. It was a campaign. Blair had walked into my son's birthday party with a script. "Why?" I whispered. Maris shook her head. "I don't know. But that comment about your mom? That was calculated." I finished wiping the table. I threw the cloth into the bucket. "I know," I said. That night, the silence in my apartment felt heavy. Leo was asleep, exhausted and sugar-crashed, sprawled out in his bed with his new toys guarding his pillow. I stood in his doorway for a long time, listening to his breathing. In, out, in, out. He was safe. I had protected him. I had absorbed the blow so he didn't have to. But now that the adrenaline was fading, the pain was blooming. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I sat at the small round table where I paid bills and graded homework. The dark window reflected my own face back at me. Tired eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun. Selfish. Like your mom. The words echoed in the empty kitchen. My mother, Elena, had been a mystery wrapped in a tragedy. She died of a sudden illness 4 years ago, leaving behind a rental house full of unpaid bills and a storage unit I had never seen. I had handled the funeral. I had handled the creditors. I had handled the cleanup. Blair had handled the sympathy. Blair had cried beautifully at the service, leaning on relatives, while I argued with the funeral director about the invoice. I had always accepted that dynamic. I was the cold, practical one. Blair was the emotional, fragile one. But selfish? I had spent my entire 20s working 2 jobs to help Mom pay rent. I had postponed college for 3 years to stay local when she got sick the first time. I had cut my own life into bite-sized pieces to feed her needs. And Blair called me selfish. It didn't make sense. It felt like gaslighting on a cosmic scale. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew it was poison. But I had to know the extent of the damage. I opened the social media app. Blair's story bubble was at the top of my feed, glowing with a purple ring. I tapped it. The image filled the screen. It was a photo taken at the party. It was cropped aggressively. It showed me standing over the cake, the knife in my hand, looking stern, with Leo in the background, looking small and blurred. The angle made me look looming, controlling. The caption was written in white, cursive text, over the dark icing of the cake. It is heartbreaking to watch narcissists ruin kids' moments. Breaking the cycle is so hard when the trauma runs deep. Toxic. Family healing. Love you, Mom. I stared at the screen, the hashtag, Love you, Mom. She was invoking our mother to attack me. She was claiming the moral high ground of healing while publicly shaming her sister on her nephew's birthday. My hand shook. I wanted to reply. I wanted to type. I was cutting a piece for a child with allergies. You absolute liar. I wanted to post the receipts of the money I had sent her last month when she claimed she couldn't make rent. I wanted to scream, but I stopped. I looked at the hashtag again. Love you, Mom. Why was she doing this? Why now? Why was she so focused on Mom? Mom had been gone for 4 years. The estate, what little there was of it, was settled. There was nothing left to fight over. Just some old furniture and a box of costume jewelry Blair had taken immediately. So why was Blair using Mom as a weapon? I put the phone down on the table, face down. A thought drifted up from the murky depths of my memory. Something about the end, when Mom died. There had been a chaotic week of paperwork. I had been overwhelmed. Blair had been staying at Mom's house. Sorting through personal items. I had let her do it because I was busy with the coroner and the landlord. Blair had told me later that there was no will, no insurance, no nothing. Just debt. I had believed her. I had no reason not to. We were both broke. Mom was broke. But Blair's attack today wasn't just meanness. It was defensive. Maris was right. Blair escalated whenever I looked stable. Whenever I looked like I had my life together, why would my stability threaten her? Unless my stability reminded her of something she had done. I stood up and walked to the hallway closet. I dug past the winter coats and the vacuum cleaner until I found the plastic bin I hadn't opened since the funeral. It was labeled Mom, paperwork in my handwriting. I dragged it to the kitchen table and popped the lid. The smell of old paper and my mother's perfume wafted out. It made my chest ache. I rifled through the folders, death certificate, cremation receipt, the lease termination notice, and then, tucked into the back of a folder labeled medical, I found it. It wasn't a formal document. It was a crumpled receipt from a pharmacy, dated 3 weeks before Mom died. On the back, in Mom's shaky, late-stage handwriting, she had scribbled a list. 1. Call Daphne. 2. Box at Hollowgate. 3. Tell Kennedy about the letter. I stared at the third line. Tell Kennedy about the letter. I had never seen a letter. Blair had told me Mom was too weak to write anything at the end. Blair said Mom's last words were just for her. Whispered secrets about how much she loved us. I looked at the second line, box at Hollowgate. I knew Hollowgate. It was a self-storage facility on the edge of town, near the highway. I assumed Mom had closed everything out. Blair had said she cleared out the storage stuff. I sat there in the dim kitchen, the receipt trembling in my fingers. Blair wasn't just a mean sister. She wasn't just jealous. She was hiding something. The insult at the party, selfish, like your mom, wasn't a random jab. It was a projection. Blair was the one who had been in the house. Blair was the one who found the papers. Blair was the one who told the story of how our mother died and what she left behind. I looked at my phone again. At the face-down screen hiding the public humiliation my sister was currently broadcasting to the world. She wanted a fight. She wanted me to explode. She wanted me to comment on that post so she could play the victim, so she could say, "See? She's crazy. She's attacking me." I wasn't going to give her that. I wasn't going to fight in the comments section. I wasn't going to call her and scream. I picked up the receipt and smoothed it out on the table. I was going to find out what was in the box at Hollowgate. I was going to find out who Daphne was, and I was going to find the letter my mother intended for me. I took a deep breath, the air filling my lungs, steadying my heart rate. "You want to talk about Mom?" "Blair?" I whispered to the empty room. "Okay, let's talk about Mom." I folded the receipt and put it in my pocket. I turned off the kitchen light. Tomorrow, I would start digging. Tonight, I would sleep, because my son needed a mother who was rested, not a mother who was broken. I walked back to my bedroom, passing Leo's door. He made a soft noise in his sleep, a little sigh of contentment. I would burn the world down for him if I had to, but I wouldn't do it with fire. I would do it with the truth, and for the first time in years. I didn't feel afraid of my sister. I felt focused, selfish like your mom. We'll see about that. The morning after the party, the sky was a bruised shade of purple, heavy with rain that refused to fall. I sat in a booth at Clear Creek Coffee, my hands wrapped around a mug of black tea that had gone lukewarm 10 minutes ago. Across from me, Maris Caldwell was tearing a sugar packet into tiny, precise strips. Maris had been my friend since high school. She had seen me through bad haircuts, a failed engagement, the terror of becoming a single mother, and the slow, agonizing decline of my mother. She knew where the bodies were buried because she had helped me dig the graves. She did it on purpose. "Kennedy," Maris said, her voice low and flat. I looked out the window, watching a woman struggle to fold a stroller on the sidewalk. "I know she did," I said, "but why? The party was going fine. Everyone was happy. Leo was happy. Why blow it up right then?" Maris stopped tearing the paper and looked at me. Her eyes were dark and serious. "Because you were happy," she said. I frowned. "That sounds like a villain in a cartoon." "Maris, people don't just hate happiness. Blair does." Maris countered. "Not everyone's happiness. Just yours. Have you ever noticed the pattern?" I took a sip of the cold tea. "What pattern?" "Think back," she said. "When you got that promotion at the insurance agency 3 years ago? What happened?" I thought about it. That was the week Blair called me in a panic, claiming she had been evicted and needed a place to stay. She slept on my couch for a month, criticized my apartment, and left without saying thank you. "Okay," I said. "Bad timing." Maris shook her head. "When you started dating that nice guy? David, the architect?" "Blair told him at a family barbecue that I was still in love with my ex," I said, the memory stinging like a paper cut. "Exactly," Maris said. "And yesterday? You looked stable. You looked like a good mom with a handle on things. You threw a great party on a budget. You had friends there. You had a community." And Blair walked in and saw that she wasn't the center of gravity. So she shifted the axis. I rubbed my temples. The headache from the day before was still pulsing behind my eyes. She called me selfish. I whispered, "Like Mom." "That is the hook," Maris said. "She knows that is your weak spot. She knows you spent 10 years cleaning up your mother's messes. So she accuses you of being the mess maker. It is classic projection. But Kennedy, you have to stop trying to rationalize it. You are trying to apply logic to an emotional sniper." I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to believe that my sister was just damaged, just grieving wrong, just clumsy with her words. Because if I believed what Maris was saying, that Blair was actively trying to dismantle my life, then I had to do something about it. And I was so tired. "I have to go to the bakery," I said, deflecting. I promised the teacher I would bring cupcakes for the class today since the party was on a Sunday. Maris reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. "Watch your back," she said. "She is not done." I left the coffee shop and drove to Sweet Crumb, the local bakery that did the best vanilla bean frosting in the city. I needed this errand to be normal. I needed to be the mom who brings treats on a Monday morning, the mom who has it together. The bell above the door chimed as I walked in. The smell of yeast and sugar usually comforted me, but today it made my stomach turn. I was waiting at the counter, scrolling through my phone, avoiding social media apps, when I heard a voice behind me. "Kennedy?" "Oh, hi." I turned. It was Kara Wynn, a neighbor who lived 2 streets over. Our kids played soccer together sometimes. Kara was nice, in that vague, suburban way where we exchanged polite nods about the weather and the recycling schedule. "Hi, Kara," I said, forcing a smile. Kara looked at me, and then her eyes darted away, landing somewhere near my left shoulder. She shifted her purse from one arm to the other. "I saw you had the party yesterday," she said. "Happy birthday to Leo." "Thank you," I said. "It was fun." "Yeah," Kara said. She paused, and the air between us grew thick and awkward. I saw Blair's post," she said. My heart hammered against my ribs. I kept my face still. "Oh?" I said. "Yeah," Kara said, looking pained. She seemed really upset. "Something about you cutting her out of the family?" "I don't know." It was really vague, but a few people in the comments were asking if Leo was okay. I felt the blood drain from my face. If Leo was okay? Kara nodded quickly, backing away slightly. "I am sure it is just drama. You know how social media is. But, I just thought you should know. It is getting shared around a bit." She grabbed her bag of bagels and practically ran to the register. I stood there, frozen. It wasn't just a dig at me anymore. Blair was implying that my son was in danger. She was using the language of protection and trauma to paint me as an unfit mother. I paid for the cupcakes with numb fingers. I walked back to my car, got inside, and locked the doors. The silence of the car felt like a sanctuary. I gripped the steering wheel. I could feel the anger rising. Hot and jagged, I pulled out my phone. I opened my text thread with Blair. The last message was from me. Sent 3 days ago. "Parking is around the back for the party." I typed. I deleted. I typed again. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her she was a monster, but I heard Maris's voice in my head. "She escalates when you react." I took a deep breath and typed a message that was cool, calm, and firm. "Blair, take the post down. Don't bring Mom into this. If you are upset with me, talk to me privately, but do not discuss my son or my parenting on the internet." I hit send. I stared at the screen, watching the 3 little dots appear almost instantly. She had been waiting. The response came in a blue bubble that took up half the screen. "I am not the one who needs to hide things. Kennedy, I am speaking my truth. You have spent years rewriting history to make yourself look like the saint and Mom like the villain. But I was there at the end. I saw how you treated her. I know what you did. Don't threaten me." I stared at the phrase. "I know what you did." The world tilted slightly. What did I do? I closed my eyes and let the memory wash over me. The hospital room. The smell of antiseptic and dying flowers. The sound of the heart monitor beeping its slow, irregular rhythm. I had been there every day after work. I had brought the clean laundry. I had argued with the nurses about pain medication. I had paid the copays on my credit card. Where was Blair? Blair was in the hallway, crying on the phone to her boyfriend. Blair was posting selfies holding Mom's frail hand with captions about warriors and angels. Blair was sleeping in the guest chair, looking tragic and beautiful, while I wiped vomit off the floor because the orderly was taking too long. I had been the one to sign the do not resuscitate order because Mom had asked me to. Months before, she had made me promise, "No machines. Kennedy, let me go." When the time came, Blair had screamed. She had thrown herself across the bed, begging the doctors to do something, begging them to try one more time. I had stood in the corner, holding the legal document, my face made of stone, ensuring our mother's wish was honored. Blair had called me a murderer then. She had screamed it in the ICU hallway. Was that it? Was that the thing I did? Following the law? Following Mom's wishes? Or was it something else? Rewriting history. She had said. I looked at the phone again. Blair believed a different version of reality, or she needed to believe it. I drove home on autopilot. I dropped the cupcakes at the school office, giving the receptionist a bright, fake smile. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't start my work. I walked straight to the closet and pulled out the plastic bin again. I took out the folder I had found the night before. The mom box. I spread the papers out on the dining table, the receipts, the discharge notes, the crumpled pharmacy bag, and the note I had found on the back of the receipt. Box at Hollowgate. I had ignored it for 4 years. I had assumed it was just one of Mom's manic hoarding phases, a box of old coats or broken kitchen appliances she couldn't bear to throw away. But Blair's text, "I know what you did," made me wonder if there was something in that box that changed the narrative. I picked up the note. It had a unit number, 404, and a customer ID number. I looked at the clock. It was 11 in the morning. I dialed the number for Hollowgate Storage. It rang 4 times before a woman answered. Her voice sounded bored and tinny. Hollowgate Storage. This is Brenda. Hi, I said, trying to sound official. I am calling about a unit. My mother passed away a few years ago, and I found a record of a rental. I am trying to clear up the estate paperwork. Name on the account? Brenda asked, typing loudly in the background. Elena Morgan, I said. Silence. Then more typing. I don't have an Elena Morgan. Brenda said. My heart sank. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was an old note from years ago. Wait, I said. She might have used her maiden name, Elena Vance, or maybe she put it under a business name. She sometimes sold crafts. Let me check Vance, Brenda said. A pause. Okay, I have an Elena Vance. Unit 404. I let out a breath. That is it. Is the unit still active? Well, that is the thing. Brenda said, it is in lien status. The autopay stopped working 3 months ago. We sent notices, but nobody responded. It is scheduled for auction next month. Auction. My stomach dropped. Whatever was in there was weeks away from being sold to a stranger on a reality TV show. But wait, I said, you said the autopay stopped 3 months ago? Yes, ma'am. My mother died 4 years ago. If the unit was prepaid, or on autopay, who had been paying it for the last 4 years? Mom's bank accounts were closed. I had closed them myself. Ma'am? Brenda said. Who was paying the bill? I asked, my voice rising. I can't give out financial details over the phone, Brenda said, slipping into her rehearsed policy voice. Okay, I said, steadying myself. Can you tell me who the contact person is? If you sent notices, where did you send them? I sent them to the address on file, Brenda said, and I called the secondary contact. Who is the secondary contact? I asked. Brenda hesitated. Usually I can't, since the account is delinquent. I guess it doesn't matter. Secondary contact is Blair Morgan. The room seemed to tilt. Blair was the secondary contact. Blair had been getting the calls, and more importantly, if the account was active for 4 years after Mom died, and Mom's accounts were closed, that meant someone else was paying for it. Blair? Blair, who constantly borrowed money from me. Blair, who claimed she couldn't afford a bridesmaid dress for her friend's wedding. Blair had been paying a monthly storage fee for 4 years? Why? Why would she pay to keep a box of Mom's old junk? Unless it wasn't junk, did she have access? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Yes, Brenda said. She is listed as an authorized user with a gate code, but like I said, nobody has been here in months. The code is locked out now until the balance is paid. My mind was racing. Blair had access. Blair knew about the unit. Blair had hidden it from me during the estate settlement. When I asked her if there was anything else, any assets, any property, any storage, she had looked me in the eye and said, No, Kennedy, Mom left us nothing but debt. She had lied. I need to get into that unit. I said, "You can't," Brenda said firmly, "not unless you pay the back rent and the late fees. And since your name isn't on the account, I can't take payment from you. You need to be the account holder or the authorized user, or you need court papers proving you are the executor. I am the daughter." I said, "Doesn't matter. Hun, the law is the law." I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall. The betrayal felt physical, a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. It wasn't just about money, it was about the gaslighting. Blair had watched me agonizing over Mom's unpaid electric bills, watched me sell my car to pay off the funeral home, all while she was secretly maintaining a storage unit I didn't know existed. Why? What was in there that was worth paying for, but not worth telling me about? And why stop paying 3 months ago? I stood up and paced the small living room. I could call Blair, I could confront her, I could say, "I know about Hollowgate," but if I did that, she would panic. She might go there, pay the fee, and empty the unit before I could get to it. She might destroy whatever is inside. No, I needed to be smarter than that. I needed to get in there legally. I needed to see what she was hiding before she knew I was looking. I went to my laptop and searched for probate attorneys Larkhaven. I didn't have money for a lawyer. I barely had money for rent, but I had a small savings account I had been building for Leo's summer camp. I felt a pang of guilt. Selfish. No, this wasn't selfish. This was protection. Blair was escalating. She was attacking my parenting. She was rewriting history, and she was hiding assets. If I didn't find out the truth, she would keep this cloud over my head forever. I found a name. Elliot Vance. No relation to my mother's maiden name. Just a coincidence. He had good reviews. Fair, direct, affordable. I called his office. "I need to make an appointment." I told the receptionist, "It is about a contested estate and a hidden asset." She gave me a slot for Thursday. 3 days away, 3 days of silence, 3 days of letting Blair think she had won. I spent the rest of the day in a fog. I picked up Leo from school, and we went to the park. I pushed him on the swing, watching his legs pump back and forth, listening to him talk about Minecraft and the new kid in his class. "Mom, are you listening?" he asked at one point, stopping the swing. I blinked. "Yes, baby, I am listening. You look sad," he said. I forced a smile. "I am just thinking. Leo, thinking about work." "Don't be sad," he said. The cake was really good. I felt tears prick my eyes. I walked over and kissed his forehead through the chain link of the swing set. "Thank you, sweetie." That night, after Leo was asleep, the apartment was quiet again. The wind was picking up outside, rattling the loose window pane in the kitchen. I couldn't sleep. The adrenaline was still coursing through me. I went back to the mom box. I dug deeper this time. I found the old phone. It was my mother's cell phone. I had kept it charged for a few months after she died, just in case someone called. But eventually, I had turned it off and thrown it in the bin. I found the charger cord, a frayed white wire, and plugged it in. The screen lit up with a generic battery icon. I waited. 5 minutes later, the phone buzzed. I turned it on. The wallpaper was a picture of Blair. Of course it was. Blair smiling, looking radiant. I went to the voicemail. There were 3 saved messages. The first was from a bill collector. The second was from Blair, asking for money. "Mom, pick up. I really need to borrow $200. It is an emergency." The third message was from Mom herself. I frowned. How could Mom leave a voicemail on her own phone? I looked at the date. It was 2 days before she died. She must have called her own number to record a memo. She did that sometimes when her memory started failing. She would leave herself reminders. I pressed play. The voice that filled the kitchen was weak, breathless, but unmistakably hers. It wasn't the angry, confused voice of her final weeks. It was the voice of the woman who used to sing me to sleep. "Kennedy, if you are listening to this, I messed up. I messed up so much." A pause. The sound of labored breathing. "I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid you would hate me. Blair. Blair said she would handle it. She said she would fix it. Another pause, a cough that sounded wet and painful. But I don't trust her. Baby, I love her. But I don't trust her. Not with this. The truth is in the box. At the storage place. The key is inside the voice trailed off. There was a shuffling sound, like the phone slipping from her hand. Don't let her take it. Kennedy, it is for the boy. It is for your boy. The recording ended. I sat in the dark, the phone warm in my hand. It is for the boy. She meant Leo, my mother, who had died with nothing, who had left me with debt and shame, had hidden something for my son, and Blair knew. Blair had known for 4 years. Blair had said she would handle it, and what had she done? She had locked it away. She had kept it secret, and now she was letting it go to auction. Rage, cold and clear, washed over me. It replaced the fear. It replaced the doubt. My sister wasn't just a narcissist. She was a thief. She had stolen from my son. I looked at the phone in my hand. I looked at the dark window. You want a war. Blair? I whispered. I saved the voicemail. I backed it up to my laptop. I emailed it to myself. I wasn't going to text her again. I wasn't going to comment on her post. I was going to get that box. And then I was going to destroy the lie she had built her life on. I turned off the kitchen light. Selfish like your mom. No, Blair. I am not selfish. I am a mother, and you have no idea what that means. The office of Elliot Vance was located on the 2nd floor of a brick building that smelled of floor wax and old paper. It was not the kind of high-rise glass tower where corporate mergers were signed. It was a place where people came to deal with the messy, unglamorous business of death and debt. I sat in a leather chair that had cracked with age. My hands folded tightly in my lap. Elliot Vance sat across from me. He was a man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and a patience that seemed etched into the deep lines of his forehead. So, let me understand, Vance said, leaning back. Your mother passed away 4 years ago. You believed there was no estate, no will, and no assets. That is what my sister told me. I said, and I believed her because my mother was always struggling. We grew up with eviction notices taped to the front door. The idea that she died with nothing made sense. Vance nodded slowly. He made a note on a yellow legal pad. But now you have found evidence of a storage unit. I continued. One that was paid for years in advance, or kept current until very recently, and my sister is listed as the contact, and the voicemail. Vance added. I nodded. The voicemail says there is something in the box for my son. Vance took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Here is the reality. Kennedy, if there was no will, the laws of intestacy in this state say that everything should have been split equally between you and your sister. It does not matter if it was a diamond ring or a box of old sweaters. If your sister took control of assets and hid them from you, that is a problem. But the timeline complicates things. How? I asked. Probate usually happens within a year or two, he said, if 4 years have passed, and nothing was filed. We are in a gray area. However, if your sister filed something, even a small estate affidavit, and intentionally left you off, that is fraud. I felt a chill go through me. Fraud. It was such a heavy criminal word. I didn't want my sister to be a criminal. I just wanted her to stop hurting me. What should I do? I asked. First, we need to see what was actually filed. Vance said, you need to go to the county clerk in Brightwood County. Pull the records for Elena Vance or Elena Morgan. See if a file exists. If it does, we work from there. He leaned forward, his expression grave. And Kennedy, he said, do not start a war on social media. Do not scream at her in the street. If she is hiding things, she will try to provoke you. She wants you to look unstable so she can claim you are unfit to handle the estate. Document everything. Dates, times, exact words. Be boring. Be factual. I left his office with a list of instructions and a knot in my stomach. The drive to the Brightwood County Courthouse took 40 minutes. The sky was a flat, slate gray, threatening rain again. I turned off the radio. I needed silence. I needed to think. Blair had always been the one who handled people. She was charming. She could talk her way out of a speeding ticket or into a VIP section. I was the one who handled paper. I paid the bills. I filled out the forms. I read the fine print. It was strange. I realized that I had let her handle the aftermath of Mom's death. But I had been so tired. I had been grieving so hard. A deep, hollow ache that made it hard to get out of bed. When Blair offered to deal with the admin, I had been grateful. I walked into the records division of the courthouse. It was a quiet room with rows of computers and a smell of dust. I gave the clerk my mother's name. She typed it in. "I have a file here." The clerk said, "Closed 3 years ago." My heart hammered. "Can I see it?" I asked. She printed out a stack of papers and handed them to me across the counter. I took them to a small wooden table in the corner. My hands were trembling so much I had to press them flat against the wood to steady them. I looked at the top document. Small estate affidavit. It was a legal form used when a person dies with assets worth less than a certain amount, allowing the heirs to bypass full probate. I scanned the lines. Decedent, Elena Vance. Applicant, Blair Morgan. And then, the section for heirs. There was a list. It was a short list. Name, Blair Morgan. Relationship, daughter. That was it. There was no Kennedy Morgan. There was no mention of a second daughter. I read the sworn statement at the bottom. I affirm that I have listed all known heirs and that all information is true and correct. Signed, Blair Morgan. I felt sick. A physical wave of nausea rolled through me. I had to close my eyes. She had erased me. It wasn't just that she had taken whatever money was there. The affidavit listed a bank account with $4,000 and personal property valued at $500. It was that she had stood before a notary, raised her right hand, and sworn that I did not exist. Why? $4,000 was not a fortune. Split 2 ways. It was $2,000. Blair could have asked me for the money. I would have given it to her. I always gave her money. This wasn't about the cash. This was about control. This was about rewriting the story of our family so that she was the only one who mattered. She was the only grieving daughter. She was the only heir. I took a picture of the document with my phone. Then I asked the clerk for a certified copy. I walked out of the courthouse into the drizzle. The cool rain felt good on my hot face. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel. I had the proof. Blair had committed perjury. She had stolen from the estate. I could take this to Vance, and he could file a motion. We could drag her into court. But I needed to know why. I needed to look her in the eye and ask her. And I needed to know if she had emptied the storage unit. I picked up my phone. I didn't text. I called her. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hello?" Her voice was guarded. "Meet me for coffee," I said. "The roasting place on 4th Street. In an hour. I am busy." "Kennedy," she said. I found the affidavit." "Blair," I said, cutting her off. Silence. A long, heavy silence. "I will be there in an hour," she said, and hung up. The coffee shop was loud. The espresso machine hissed, and indie folk music played over the speakers. I chose a table in the center of the room, visible from all angles. I wasn't going to let her corner me. I ordered a black coffee and waited. Blair arrived 20 minutes late. She burst through the door in a flurry of movement, wearing a trench coat and dark sunglasses, looking like a celebrity hiding from paparazzi. She scanned the room, saw me, and marched over. She sat down without taking off her coat. She didn't order anything. "You are acting crazy," she said. That was her opening move. Attack the reality of the person confronting you. I placed the certified copy of the affidavit on the table between us. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I kept my voice as level as the horizon. "You filed this 3 years ago." I said. "You swore to the court that you were the only heir. You took $4,000 from Mom's account, and you never told me." Blair looked at the paper, then looked away. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but I couldn't tell if it was from crying or lack of sleep. "It wasn't like that," she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You make it sound so clinical. It is clinical. Blair, it is a legal document." "Why did you lie?" I didn't lie, she hissed. I handled it. You were a mess. Kennedy, you were working all the time. You were stressed about Leo. I didn't want to burden you with the paperwork. So you burdened yourself with the money? I asked. She scoffed. $4,000? You think I did this for $4,000? That barely covered the debt she left behind. Kennedy! I paid off her credit cards. I paid the utility bills you missed. I used that money to clean up her mess. Show me the receipts. I said, I don't have receipts from 3 years ago, she cried out. People turned to look. She lowered her voice immediately. Leaning in, I was protecting you, she said, her eyes filling with sudden, glistening tears. She was in a bad place at the end. She owed people money, bad people. I didn't want you to know. I took the heat. I took the risk. And this is how you thank me? By investigating me? I watched her cry. A tear tracked perfectly down her cheek. It was a beautiful performance. 4 years ago, I would have reached across the table and apologized. I would have offered to pay her back. But today, I just saw the math. You listed yourself on the storage unit. I said. She froze. The tears stopped instantly. What storage unit? She asked. Hollowgate. I said. Unit 404. The one you have been paying for. The one that is about to be auctioned off. She stared at me. Her face went blank. Stripped of the tragic sister mask. You went there, she said flatly. I called them. I said, they told me you are the contact. Why did you keep it a secret? She sat back in her chair. Crossing her arms, a small, cruel smile played on her lips. Because it was none of your business. Mom's things are my business. I said, not the things she gave to me. Blair said, she didn't give them to you. I said, she left them in a box, and she left a voicemail saying the truth was inside. Blair laughed. It was a sharp, barking sound. The truth? Oh, Kennedy, you and your dramatic search for meaning. You want to know the truth? Yes, I said. The truth is that Mom couldn't stand being around you. Blair said. The words landed like a slap. I didn't flinch, but I felt the sting. She told me, Blair continued, leaning forward, her eyes bright with malice. She said, Kennedy is exhausting. She only cares about appearances. She treats me like a project, not a person. I gripped my coffee cup. That is a lie. I said, is it? Blair asked. Look at you. You were the one who obsessed over the hospital bills. You were the one who made everyone sign in the guest book. You were the one who treated her dying like a checklist. You used her decline to look like a hero, to look like the sainted single mother who bears it all. Mom saw right through it. I felt the doubt creep in. The insidious, black water of self-loathing. Was I cold? Did I treat Mom like a burden? I remembered the nights I sat up holding her hand. I remembered reading to her. I remembered the way she looked at me when she couldn't speak. Her eyes soft and grateful. No, Blair was rewriting it. She was taking my competence, the very thing that kept us all afloat, and twisting it into a character flaw. I took a breath. I pushed the doubt away. You are trying to hurt me because I caught you. I said. Blair rolled her eyes. I am trying to help you see reality. I have one question. I said, did you take anything from the storage unit? Blair picked up her sunglasses and twirled them in her fingers. Why? You think there is gold bars in there? Did you take anything? I repeated. She stood up. She towered over me, buttoning her coat. If I did, she said, looking down at me. It was mine too. She smirked. It was the same look she gave me when we were teenagers and she had stolen my favorite sweater. A look that said, I took it, and you can't do anything about it. She turned and walked out of the coffee shop. I sat there for a long time. My coffee was cold. My hands were shaking so hard the liquid rippled in the cup. She hadn't denied it. If I did, it was mine too. She had been in the unit. I left money on the table and walked out. I got into my car and locked the doors. I dialed Elliot Vance's number. She knows. I told him when he answered. I confronted her. She admitted she had access. Did she admit to taking anything? Vance asked. She implied it. I said, okay. Vance said, we need to move fast. If she thinks you are onto her, she might go back and clear out the rest. Or she might have already done it. I'm going to call the facility manager directly. I will use my authority as an attorney investigating a potential estate fraud. I can usually get them to freeze access for 24 hours while we sort out the paperwork. Can we find out what she took? I asked. Maybe. He said, electronic gate logs will show when she entered. If she went in yesterday, we know she panicked. If she hasn't been in there for months, whatever is left is probably safe. I will call you back, he said. I drove home, constantly checking my rearview mirror. Half expecting to see Blair's car following me, I felt paranoid. I felt like I was in a movie, not my real life. An hour later, Vance called me back. Good news and bad news. Kennedy, give me the bad news first. I said, the logs show activity, he said. Your sister accessed the unit 3 weeks ago. She was inside for 2 hours, and before that, she visited about once every 6 months for the last few years. 3 weeks ago, right around the time she stopped paying the bill. And the good news? I asked. She hasn't been there since the birthday party, Vance said. And the manager, a woman named Brenda, did a visually verified inventory for the auction listing. She says there are items remaining. What items? I asked. She described a large sealed plastic bin, several cardboard boxes of what looked like photo albums, and a small metal cash box, a cash box. My heart leaped. Is it open? I asked. No, Vance said. Brenda says it is locked. It is a heavy-duty security box. The voicemail. The truth is in the box. She didn't take it. I whispered. Maybe she couldn't, Vance said. Or maybe she didn't have the key. Or maybe she thought it was empty. Kennedy, listen to me, he continued. I have arranged for a supervised access tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. The manager will be there. I will be there. We will video record the opening of the unit. We will inventory every single item. If your sister took anything of value previously, we might not be able to prove it yet, but we can secure what is left. I will be there, I said. Do not tell your sister, Vance warned. If she shows up, it becomes a civil disturbance and the facility will kick us all out. I won't tell her. I said. I hung up. I spent the rest of the day in a state of nervous energy. I deep-cleaned the bathroom. I reorganized Leo's bookshelf. I needed to do something with my hands. When Leo came home from school, I hugged him tighter than usual. Mom, you are squishing me. He laughed. Sorry, I said, letting go. Just missed you. We made spaghetti for dinner. I watched him eat, watched the way he twirled the pasta on his fork, concentrating hard. He had my eyes, but he had my mother's smile, the way the corner of his mouth ticked up when he was amused. Blair had said I was cold, that I only cared about appearances. I looked at my son, safe and fed and happy in our warm, clean kitchen. Was it cold to want safety? Was it cold to want order in a world that had been chaotic for so long? My mother had been a creature of chaos. She loved hard, but she lived messy. She spent rent money on gifts. She forgot to pay insurance. She moved us 4 times in 6 years. I had loved her. But I had hated the uncertainty, and now I was discovering that the chaos hadn't ended with her death. She had left one last knot for me to untangle. The next morning, the rain had stopped. The sky was a pale, washed-out blue. I drove to Hollowgate Storage. It was a sprawling complex of beige metal buildings surrounded by a high fence topped with barbed wire. I parked near the office. Elliot Vance was already there, leaning against a gray sedan, holding a briefcase. Ready? He asked as I walked up. Ready, I said. We went into the office. Brenda, the manager I had spoken to on the phone, looked up from her desk. She was a woman in her 50s with skepticism etched into her face. You the daughter? She asked. Yes, I said. Kennedy Morgan. And you are the lawyer, she said to Vance. He handed her a business card. We appreciate you doing this. Brenda, we just need to verify the contents before any decisions are made about the account balance. Brenda grabbed a ring of keys. Standard procedure for abandoned units is to cut the lock if we don't have a key, she said. But since the sister has a code, well, the lock is still hers. Do you have a key? I shook my head. No. Then we cut it, Brenda said. She picked up a pair of large bolt cutters. We walked down the long, echoing hallway of Building B. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The air smelled of concrete and dust. Unit 404. It was a standard orange roll-up door. A silver disc lock secured the latch. Brenda positioned the bolt cutters. With a grunt of effort, she snapped the metal. The lock fell to the floor with a heavy clang. She grabbed the handle and slid the door up. The metal rattled loudly, the sound echoing down the corridor like a gunshot. I held my breath. The unit was small, maybe 5 by 5 feet. It was mostly empty. There were no furniture pieces, no stacks of old clothes. In the center of the concrete floor sat a plastic tote bin, clear but dusty. Beside it, 3 cardboard boxes labeled photos, and on top of the tote bin sat a gray metal box. It looked like a fireproof document safe. That is it? I asked, my voice echoing. That is what is left, Brenda said. Like I said, the log shows the other user took a few loads out over the years. Looks like she left the heavy stuff in the paper. I stepped inside. The space felt cold. Vance took out his phone and started recording video. State your name and the date, he said. Kennedy Morgan, January 23rd. I knelt beside the items. I touched the plastic bin first. I could see through the side. Old toys, a blanket, keepsakes. I opened the cardboard boxes. They were crammed with photo albums, the old kind, with the sticky pages and plastic film. I opened one at random. It was pictures of me and Blair as kids. A birthday party. I was blowing out candles. Mom was laughing in the background, young and beautiful. I felt a lump in my throat. Blair hadn't taken the photos. She had left our memories to be auctioned off to strangers. Then I reached for the metal box. It was heavy, locked. There was no key. I shook it gently. Something shifted inside, not coins. It sounded like paper and maybe something small and solid, like a USB drive or a set of keys. We need a locksmith for this, Vance said from the doorway, or we can force it. But I recommend a locksmith to preserve the lock if we need to prove it hasn't been tampered with later. I stared at the box. The truth is in the box. Can we take it? I asked. Brenda stepped forward. Technically, until the bill is paid. Nothing leaves the property. I will pay it. I said immediately, how much is owed? 3 months plus late fees. About $450. Brenda said. I pulled out my debit card. I will pay it right now. Brenda nodded. Come to the office. We locked the unit with a new lock I purchased from Brenda. I paid the bill. The receipt felt like a victory flag. We carried the items to my car. Vance carried the metal box. I put it on the passenger seat. What now? I asked Vance. Now we go to my office. He said, I have a locksmith who can be there in 20 minutes. We open it together. We document everything. I nodded as I drove away from the storage unit, following Vance's gray sedan. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was a notification from Instagram. Blair had posted again. I didn't open it. I didn't care. She could post whatever she wanted. She could tell the world I was selfish. She could tell the world I was a narcissist. She didn't know I had the box. She thought she had stripped the unit of everything valuable. She thought she had won. But she had left the one thing Mom wanted me to have. And in 20 minutes, I was going to find out why. The air in the storage unit had been stagnant for years, holding its breath until we broke the seal. While Elliot Vance, my attorney, was busy logging the serial number on the locked metal cash box, I had turned my attention to the large plastic bin sitting in the center of the concrete floor. It was a standard clear tote, the kind you buy at a discount store when you are trying to organize a life that is falling apart. Through the dusty plastic, I could see colors, faded pinks, soft blues. I popped the latches. They snapped open with a loud, dry crack that made Vance look up from his clipboard. Just documenting the contents, I said, my voice sounding thin in the metallic echo of the room. I lifted the lid. The smell hit me first. It was the scent of my mother's house from before she got sick, not the antiseptic smell of the hospital or the musty smell of the rental she died in, but the smell of vanilla candles and fabric softener. It was a smell I hadn't realized I had forgotten until it filled my nose, bringing a sudden, sharp sting of tears to my eyes. Inside were things I thought were long gone. There was my second-grade art project. A clay bowl painted a disastrous shade of brown. There was the quilt my grandmother had stitched. The one Blair had told me got ruined in a basement flood. There was a stack of Leo's baby clothes, the ones I had lent to Mom to store when I moved apartments. Blair had told me she donated them. She said, "You don't need that clutter. Kennedy, let it go." But here they were. I dug deeper, my hands trembling. Beneath the baby clothes was a photo album. It was one of the old magnetic ones with the sticky pages. I opened it. It was a massacre. Dozens of pages had been stripped. You could see the clean, pale rectangles where photos used to be, surrounded by the yellowing adhesive. The few photos that remained were telling. There was a picture of me looking sulky at 13, a picture of me with a bad haircut, a picture of me arguing with Mom in the kitchen. But the pictures of happy times, the Christmases where we were laughing, the beach trips, gone. Blair had been here. She had curated the history. She had removed the evidence of joy, leaving only the evidence of dysfunction. I turned the last page. Taped to the inside back cover was a white envelope. It was thick and sealed with Scotch tape. On the front, in my mother's looping, chaotic handwriting, were the words, "For Kennedy, do not let Blair decide this." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Vance stepped closer, his shadow falling over the box. "What did you find?" he asked. I peeled the envelope off the cardboard. It made a tearing sound. "A letter," I said. I opened it right there, sitting on the cold concrete floor of Unit 404. The paper was lined notebook paper, the kind with the jagged edge where it had been ripped from a spiral binding. The writing was shaky, written in blue ballpoint pen. It was dated 2 months before she died. "Kennedy, if you are reading this, it means you finally stopped listening to your sister and started looking for yourself. I hope you did. I pray you did. I am writing this because I am tired. Baby, I am so tired. The doctors say my heart is weak, but I think my will is just gone. Blair is here every day. She brings me soup and she brushes my hair and she tells me that I need to sign things. She tells me that you are busy. She tells me that you are angry with me. She says you don't want to deal with the mess I made. I know I made a mess. I know I wasn't the mother you needed. You were always the strong one, and I leaned on you until you almost broke. I am sorry for that. I am so sorry. But I need you to know something. Blair needs to be the hero. She needs to believe she is the good one, the savior. If she doesn't feel like the savior, she feels like nothing. So I let her play the part. I let her handle the papers. I let her tell the neighbors how much she does. It is the only way to keep the peace, but I cannot let her handle the money for the boy. I paused, my breath catching. The money for the boy. I hid the key to the cash box. Blair thinks she found everything, but she didn't find the second file. I gave it to Daphne Rowe. You remember Daphne? We fought years ago, but she is the only one who keeps her mouth shut. Go to Daphne. She has the papers. Do not let Blair spin this. She will try to say I was confused. She will try to say I promised it to her. I didn't. I want my grandson to have a start. I want him to have the safety I never gave you. I love you. Kennedy, you are not selfish. You are the only one who ever told me the truth. Love, Mom. I lowered the paper. The tears finally spilled over. Hot and fast. For 4 years, I had carried the weight of Blair's narrative. Selfish like your mom. I had believed, in the darkest corners of my mind, that my mother had died thinking I was cold and distant. I had believed that Blair was the one who loved her best. But it was a lie. It was a play, directed by Blair, starring Blair, with our dying mother forced to be a supporting actor. "Kennedy?" Vance asked gently. I handed him the letter. He read it silently, his face impassive. "This is significant," he said. "It speaks to intent, and it identifies a witness. Daphne Rowe." "Who is Daphne Rowe?" I asked, wiping my face. "I remember the name." Vance said, "She used to run the bookkeeping for the local school district. Retired now. If she is holding documents, we need them." I stood up, clutching the letter to my chest. "Blair doesn't have the key." I said, "Mom hid it." Vance looked at the metal cash box we had just secured. "That explains why it is still locked," he said. "Your sister likely found the storage unit, raided the photos, took whatever loose items she wanted, but she couldn't get into the box. And she couldn't break it open without leaving evidence of forced entry, which might have triggered an audit if anyone ever looked." She was waiting. I realized she was paying the storage fee, keeping the unit alive, hoping to find the key, or maybe she was just keeping it hidden until she felt safe enough to drill it open. But then she stopped paying. Why? Maybe she gave up, Vance suggested. Or maybe she ran out of money. Or maybe she decided that if she couldn't have it, nobody would. Let it go to auction and vanish. I looked at the plastic bin one last time. I took the photo album. I took the baby clothes. "We are taking the box," I said, "and I am finding Daphne." 2 hours later, I was sitting in my car outside a small yellow ranch house on the edge of town. I had found Daphne Rowe's number in the phone book. It felt archaic, looking up a landline, but Daphne was from a different time. When I called, I expected her to hang up. My mother and Daphne had a legendary falling out 10 years ago. I didn't know the details, only that names were called and doors were slammed. But when I said my name, Daphne had been quiet for a long moment. "Kennedy," she had said, "I was wondering when you would call. I was waiting for you. Not your sister. Now, walking up the cracked concrete path to her front door." I felt a new kind of nervousness. Daphne knew things. She held the second file. I knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Daphne Rowe was shorter than I remembered. Her hair a steel gray bob. Her face lined but kind. She wore a cardigan and sensible shoes. "Come in," she said. She didn't smile, but she stepped back to let me pass. Her living room was cluttered but clean, filled with ceramic figurines and the smell of peppermint tea. I sat on a floral sofa. Daphne sat in a recliner opposite me. "You look like her," Daphne said. "Around the eyes. But you have your own chin. Stronger." "I found a letter," I said. "In a storage unit." "I know," Daphne said. "She told me she put the letter there. She said it was the only place Blair wouldn't look for a piece of paper. Blair only looks for things that shine." The accuracy of the description made me wince. "Mom said you have a file." I said. Daphne nodded. She reached down beside her chair and picked up a slim manila folder. It looked old. The edges were soft. "I have kept this for 4 years." Daphne said, "I almost called you a dozen times, but Elena made me promise." She said, "Don't give it to Kennedy until she asks. If you give it to her too soon, Blair will take it from her. Kennedy has to be ready to fight." She handed me the folder. "Are you ready to fight?" she asked. I took the folder. It felt light, but it carried the weight of a hammer. "I am ready," I said. I opened it. There were 2 documents inside. The first was a letter from a bank, First City Savings. It was a confirmation of a payable on death, POD account designation. Account holder: Elena Vance. Beneficiary: Kennedy Morgan. As custodian for Leo Morgan. The date was 6 months before she died. I looked at Daphne. She sold the plot of land in Kentucky. Daphne said, "You know the one? The little scrap of dirt your grandfather left her?" "I thought she lost that in the bankruptcy." I said, "She told Blair she lost it." Daphne corrected, "But she sold it. She got $12,000 for it. She put it in this account. She wanted it to be for your son, for college, or for braces, whatever he needed. $12,000. It wasn't a life-changing fortune for a millionaire. But for me, for a single mom living paycheck to paycheck, it was a safety net. It was breathing room." "Where's the money now?" I asked. Daphne sighed. That is the hard part. She pointed to the second document. It was a piece of notebook paper, similar to the one the letter was written on. But this one wasn't a letter. It was a contract, hand-drawn, but clear. I, Blair Morgan, acknowledge that I am borrowing $12,000 from Elena Vance. I promise to repay this amount within 6 months. It was signed by Blair. It was dated 1 week after the bank account was opened. My stomach dropped. She took it. I whispered. She bullied her out of it, Daphne said. Her voice hard. Blair found out about the land sale. I don't know how. She probably snooped through the mail. She came over and cried. She threatened. She said she was in trouble with some bad people. She said she would go to jail if she didn't get the money. Elena was weak. She couldn't stand to see her baby girl cry. So she gave it to her? She loaned it. Daphne said. She made Blair sign that paper. She told me. This way. If she doesn't pay it back, Kennedy can collect it from the estate. But there was no estate. I said, because Blair filed the affidavit saying there was nothing. Exactly. Daphne said. Blair borrowed the money, waited for Mom to die, and then erased the debt by erasing the estate. She stole $12,000 from your son, Kennedy. I stared at Blair's signature. The loops were big and confident. I felt a heat rising in my chest that was hotter than anything I had felt before. It wasn't just anger, it was fury. Pure, white-hot fury. Blair had stood at my son's birthday party, eaten his cake, and called me selfish. All while she had $12,000 of his money in her pocket. She had watched me struggle to buy school supplies. She had watched me drive a car with a broken heater for 2 winters. She knew the whole time. She is a monster. I said, no, Daphne said gently. She is a tragedy, but tragedies destroy the people around them if you don't get out of the way. I looked at Daphne. Why did you help Mom? I asked. I thought you hated her. Daphne looked at the ceramic cat on her coffee table. We had our differences, she said. But toward the end, she called me. She was scared. Kennedy. She was scared of dying. But she was more scared of what Blair was becoming. She wanted to do one right thing before she went. This file. This was her penance. I stood up. I clutched the folder so hard the paper crinkled. Thank you. Daphne, go get her. Kennedy, Daphne said, and give that little boy a hug for me. I drove home in a daze. When I walked into my apartment, the ordinariness of it hit me. The pile of mail on the counter, the shoes kicked off by the door, the smell of dinner cooking. Maris had come over to watch Leo while I was running errands. Mom! Leo yelled. Running from the living room, he slammed into my legs. I dropped to my knees and hugged him. I buried my face in his neck, smelling the sweat and shampoo. $12,000. That was his future. That was his safety. And his aunt had stolen it to buy. What? Clothes? A vacation? To maintain the illusion of a successful life? Hey, Maris said, walking in from the kitchen holding a wooden spoon. You look like you saw a ghost. I saw a demon. I said. I stood up and handed Maris the folder. She opened it, read the bank letter, read the loan note. Her eyes went wide. Oh my God, she whispered. She cleaned out the account? She borrowed it and never paid it back. I said, and then she filed the estate paperwork claiming the debt didn't exist. That is theft. Kennedy. That is actual crime. I know. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was my Aunt Sarah. Sarah lived 2 towns over and usually only called on holidays. I picked up. Hello? Aunt Sarah? Kennedy. Sarah's voice was high and tight. I just got off the phone with Blair. I closed my eyes. Here it comes. Oh? I said. She is really worried about you. Honey, Sarah said. She says you are well. She says you are acting erratic. She said you are obsessed with money and you are harassing her about Mom's old things. She was crying. Kennedy. She said she is worried you might be having a breakdown. I gripped the phone. The strategy was shifting. Blair knew I was getting close, so she was painting me as insane if I accused her of theft. She could say, poor Kennedy, she is delusional, She is having an episode. Sarah, I said, keeping my voice calm. I am not having a breakdown. I am handling Mom's estate. There were some things that weren't filed correctly. Well, Blair said you threatened her. Sarah said, she said you are trying to rewrite history to make yourself look like a victim. Kennedy, we all know it was hard for you, but you can't take it out on your sister. She is all you have left. She is not all I have. I said, I have Leo. I hung up. I didn't argue. I didn't try to explain the loan note to Aunt Sarah. She wouldn't understand. She had already been poisoned. I looked at Maris. She is calling the family. I said, she is telling them I am unstable. Maris slammed the folder shut. She is scared. Maris said, she is throwing up flack because she knows the missile is coming. I looked at Leo, who had gone back to his Legos. He was building a castle. He was placing the bricks carefully, one by one, making sure the foundation was strong. I needed to be like Leo. I walked to my desk. I pulled out a fresh binder. I am done reacting. I said, I took the 3-hole punch and punched the bank letter. Click, crunch. I put it in the binder. I punched the loan note. Click, crunch. In the binder. I punched the copy of the false affidavit. In the binder. I punched the letter from Mom. In the binder. What are you doing? Maris asked. I am building a timeline. I said, dates, signatures, facts. I opened my laptop. I started a spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, event. Column C, evidence. Row 1, June 12, 2021. Mom sells land. $12,000 deposit. Row 2, June 20th, 2021. Blair signs loan agreement for $12,000. Row 3, November 15th, 2021. Mom dies. Row 4, January 10th, 2022. Blair files small estate affidavit. Lists assets as $4,000. Omits debt. Row 5, January 2022 to present. Blair pays storage unit fees to hide evidence. I typed. The clicking of the keys was the only sound in the room. I wasn't going to chase her approval anymore. I wasn't going to try to convince Aunt Sarah that I was a good person. I was going to prove that Blair was a liar. And I wasn't going to do it with tears or screaming matches at birthday parties. I was going to do it with paper. I looked at the metal cash box sitting on the counter. Still locked. We hadn't opened it yet. The locksmith was coming to Vance's office tomorrow, but I knew, with a sudden, calm certainty, that whatever was in that box was going to be the final nail. I turned to Maris. Do you still have that contact at the county clerk's office? I asked. Yeah, Maris said. Why? I need to pull the property records for Blair's condo. I said, I want to know where she got the down payment 3 years ago. Maris smiled. It was a fierce, sharp smile. On it, I went over to Leo. I sat on the floor next to him. What are you building? Bud? I asked. A fortress. He said, to keep the bad guys out. It is beautiful. I said. I kissed the top of his head. I kept the routine. We had dinner. We read The Hobbit. I tucked him in. I was the wall. I was the fortress. Blair could throw her stones. She could make her phone calls. She could post her hashtags. But she couldn't stop the truth. It was already in the binder. And tomorrow, I was going to turn the page. The office of Elliot Vance was quiet. Save for the rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. I sat across from him, the folder Daphne had given me resting on my lap like a shield. We have a problem with the bank, Vance said, sliding a piece of paper across the mahogany desk. I looked at it. It was a rejection notice regarding the payable on death account, the $12,000 my mother had set aside for Leo. But I have the beneficiary letter, I said, tapping the folder. Daphne gave it to me. Vance nodded. You have the designation. Yes, but the bank flagged the account 4 years ago. Apparently, there was a hold placed on it because of a conflicting claim filed just days after your mother died. I felt the blood heat up in my cheeks. A conflicting claim? Your sister. Vance said, she tried to access the account. When they told her she wasn't the beneficiary, she filed a contest, claiming undue influence, She froze the assets. To unfreeze them, we need the original certificate of ownership, which the bank issued to your mother. Without it, we are looking at a year of litigation. I closed my eyes. Blair had not only borrowed the money, she had made sure that if she couldn't steal it back, nobody could have it. The certificate. I said, "It has to be in the cash box." Vance stood up and grabbed his coat. "That is what I am thinking. The locksmith is meeting us at the storage facility in 20 minutes. The drive to Hollowgate Storage felt different this time. The first time, I had been afraid of what I would find. Now, I was afraid of what I wouldn't find. If that box was empty, or if it held nothing but trinkets, Blair had won. She had successfully buried my son's inheritance in a bureaucratic grave. We met the locksmith, a burly man named Dave with a tool belt that jingled as he walked. Outside Unit 404, Brenda, the manager, was there too. Looking bored but duty-bound to witness the event, Dave set the metal cash box on the concrete floor. He inspected the lock. Standard high-security cam lock. He grunted. "I can drill it in 30 seconds. Do it," I said. The sound of the drill was a high-pitched scream that echoed off the metal walls. I watched the silver shavings curl away from the bit, falling onto the concrete like metallic confetti. Pop! The lock cylinder slid out. Dave stepped back. "All yours, lady." I knelt on the cold floor. My hands were steady. I wasn't shaking anymore. I was past fear. I was in the cold, clear air of discovery. I lifted the heavy lid. The box was not empty. Sitting on top was a small black ledger, the kind you buy at a drugstore for $2. Beside it was a single brass key on a ring labeled with a bank name and a number. First City Savings, Box 202. And taped to the inside of the lid was a red USB drive with a piece of masking tape on it. On the tape, written in thick black marker, were 2 words: "Read last." I reached for the ledger first. It was my mother's handwriting, but it wasn't the chaotic scrawl of her final months. This was neat, organized. It was a record. I opened to the first page, dated 5 years ago. Loan to Blair, $500, car repair. Loan to Blair, $300, rent. Loan to Blair, $1,000. Investment opportunity. I turned the pages. It was a litany of needs, a catalog of emergencies. Every few months, Blair had come to the well, and Mom had drawn water. Then I reached the end. The entries from the year she died. August 12th, $12,000, loan for debt consolidation. Signed note, and then, a line that made my breath hitch. October 30, $2,000, cash, B took from wallet while I was sleeping. I stared at the entry. B took from wallet. Mom hadn't given it to her. She hadn't loaned it. Blair had taken it, and Mom, too weak or too heartbroken to call the police, had simply written it down in a black book and locked it away. It wasn't just selfishness, it was predation. I handed the ledger to Vance. He put on his reading glasses and scanned the page. His jaw tightened. "This establishes a pattern," he said quietly. "And that last entry? That is evidence of theft from a vulnerable adult. In this state, that is a felony." I looked at the brass key. First City Savings. I said, "That is the same bank where the payable on death account is held." Vance nodded. "She must have a safe deposit box. If you have the key, and you are the executor, or if we can prove you should be, we can get in." "Let's go," I said. We left the storage unit. I put the USB drive in my purse. I wasn't ready to listen to it yet. The label said, "Read last," and I was going to honor her instructions. First City Savings was a building of marble and hushed tones. It was the kind of place that made you feel small. Vance did the talking. He presented the death certificate, the affidavit I had found proving Blair's fraud, and the key, the manager, a stern woman in a navy suit, reviewed the documents. She made a phone call. She looked at me, then at Vance. "I can allow access for the purpose of inventory," she said. We followed her into the vault. It was a room of steel walls, lined with hundreds of small, numbered doors. The air smelled of old money and dust. She located box 202. She inserted her master key, and I inserted the brass key from the storage unit. They turned in unison. She pulled the long metal drawer out and carried it to a private viewing room. She set it on the table and left us alone. I opened the lid. Inside was a thick envelope and a certificate with a gold seal. I picked up the certificate first. It was the original certificate of deposit for the $12,000, the missing piece, the document Blair had blocked me from finding. With this, Vance said, his voice laced with professional satisfaction, we can unfreeze the account. The money is Leo's. I picked up the envelope. It was labeled, Estate Plan, Revised. I opened it. It wasn't a formal will drawn up by a lawyer. It was a handwritten document, but it was notarized. It was stamped and signed by a notary public 3 months before she died. I, Elena Vance, being of sound mind, hereby revoke all previous instructions. I appoint my daughter, Kennedy Morgan, as the sole executor of my estate. I explicitly exclude my daughter, Blair Morgan, from handling any financial assets due to a history of misappropriation. I love both my girls, but I need Kennedy to protect what is left. There it was. Blair hadn't just filed a small estate affidavit to save time. She had filed it to bury this document. She knew this existed. She must have known Mom went to a notary. Did she look for this? I asked. She probably tore the house apart looking for it, Vance said. But your mother was smarter. She put it in a safe deposit box and hid the key in a storage unit under a fake name. She built a maze, I whispered. She built a maze to keep Blair out. I felt a wave of crushing sadness. My mother shouldn't have had to build mazes. She should have been able to trust her children, but she couldn't. She had seen Blair for what she was, even when I was still making excuses. We finished the inventory. Vance took custody of the documents to begin the filing process. I walked out of the bank and into the bright, harsh afternoon sun. I sat in my car in the parking lot. I watched the people walking by, normal people, living normal lives where their sisters didn't steal from their dying mothers. I reached into my purse and pulled out the red USB drive. Read last. I plugged it into the USB port of my car's stereo system. The screen lit up. Reading. There was one file, audio_001.mp3. I pressed play. There was a hiss of static, then, the sound of a chair scraping against a floor. A deep breath. Okay, is this thing on? My mother's voice filled the car. It was raspy, stripped of the vibrant energy she used to have. But it was steady. Kennedy. If you found the key, and you found the papers, then you are listening to this. That means you figured it out. I knew you would. You always figure things out eventually. A pause. I heard the clink of a glass being set down. I want to talk to you about your sister. I know you feel guilty. I know you feel like you have to take care of her. I raised you to take care of her. And that is my fault. I put that on you when you were too little to carry it. My hands gripped the steering wheel. Tears blurred my vision. Blair is broken. Honey, I don't know how she got that way. Maybe I loved her too much. Maybe I didn't love her enough. But she takes love and she turns it into leverage. She uses it to pry things out of people. She used it on me for 40 years. She is going to be angry when I die. She is going to be angry that there is no money left. She is going to try to make you pay for it. She is going to try to make you feel small so she can feel big. Don't let her. The voice on the recording cracked. Just a little. You deserve to stop apologizing for existing. Kennedy, you deserve to live your life without paying a tax to your sister. You are a good mother. You are a good daughter. The money in the account that is for Leo. Don't let her touch it. Keep him safe. I love you. I am proud of you. Goodbye, baby. The recording ended. The silence that rushed back into the car was deafening. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the dashboard. I just cried. I cried deep, heaving sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for the mother I had lost. Not the chaotic version Blair had painted, but the woman who had seen the truth and tried, in her final messy way, to fix it. She had seen me. She knew I wasn't selfish. She knew I had been apologizing for existing my whole life, and she had given me permission to stop. I sat there for 20 minutes until the tears stopped. I wiped my face with a napkin from the glove box. I checked my eyes in the rearview mirror. They were red, but they were clear. I started the car. I wasn't going to hide anymore. I drove home. I felt a strange sense of calm. The mystery was solved. The "what did I do" question that Blair had used to torture me was answered. I hadn't done anything. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw a familiar silver convertible parked in front of my building. Blair. She was leaning against the hood of her car, checking her phone. She looked impeccable, wearing a white wool coat and oversized sunglasses. My stomach gave a little lurch, but it wasn't fear, it was anticipation. I parked and got out. Blair looked up. She took off her sunglasses. Her face was a mask of concern, but her eyes were darting around, scanning for witnesses. "Kennedy," she called out, walking toward me. "I have been calling you all day. Where have you been?" "Working," I said, walking past her toward my front door. I unlocked the door. Blair followed me in without asking. "We need to talk," she said, shutting the door behind her. I walked into the kitchen and put my purse on the counter. I turned to face her. "Okay," I said, "talk." She paced the small kitchen floor, her heels clicking on the linoleum. "I am worried about you," she said. "I really am. I spoke to Aunt Sarah, and she agrees. You are spiraling. Kennedy, all this digging into the past, it is not healthy. It is obsessive." I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "Is that what it is?" I asked. "Yes," she said, throwing her hands up. "You are trying to find money that doesn't exist. You are harassing poor Daphne Rowe. You are dragging Mom's name through the mud because you can't accept that she didn't leave you a fortune." I watched her performance. It was impressive. She really believed it, in the moment. She committed to the role. "I am not looking for a fortune." "Blair, I am looking for the truth." "The truth is what I told you," she snapped. Mom was broke. She was sick. She was confused. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen and set it on the counter. "Face up." The voice memo app was recording. "What are you doing?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "I am recording this conversation," I said calmly. "For my records." She laughed. A harsh, incredulous sound. "You are insane. You are actually insane." "Maybe," I said, "but I want to be clear. I know about the ledger." "Blair." She froze. The color drained from her face, leaving her makeup looking like a layer of paint on a mannequin. "What ledger?" "The black one?" I said, "The one in the cash box. The one that lists the $12,000 you borrowed, and the $2,000 you took from her wallet while she was sleeping." Silence. The kitchen hummed with tension. Blair's face shifted. The concern vanished. The mask fell away, revealing something ugly and sharp underneath. "You broke into the unit," she hissed. "I legally accessed it," I corrected, "with an attorney and a locksmith." She took a step toward me. "You have no right. That was my private business between me and Mom." "It stopped being private when you stole from the estate." I said, "Stole?" She spat the word. "I didn't steal anything. I was the one taking care of her. I earned every penny of that money. You were nowhere to be found. I was working to pay her rent." I said, "While you were taking cash from her purse." She stepped closer, invading my space. She smelled of expensive perfume and aggression. "You think you are so smart," she said, her voice dropping to a menace. "You think a little black book proves anything? It is the ramblings of a senile old woman. No court will take that seriously. We also found the notarized letter." I said, "The one where she explicitly removes you from the will because of your theft." Blair stopped. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She hadn't expected that. "You are lying," she whispered. "I have the original, Blair. It is in a vault." She stared at me, her mind racing, calculating angles. Then, she smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "Okay," she said. "So you found some papers. Good for you. But you know what? Nobody cares about papers. Kennedy, people care about reputation. What does that mean? I asked. It means that if you try to use this against me, if you try to sue me or expose me, I will ruin you. I looked at her, unimpressed. How? By posting another hashtag? No, she said softly. By calling the school. By calling Child Protective Services. My blood ran cold. Excuse me? I have been very concerned about Leo lately, she said, examining her fingernails. He looks thin. He seems anxious, and with his mother behaving so erratically, obsessing over dead people, showing signs of paranoia. Well, it might be time for a wellness check. I would hate for him to be placed in foster care while they investigate your mental stability. The room seemed to tilt. She went there. She actually went there. She was threatening my son. I looked at the phone recording on the counter. Then I looked at my sister. For the first time in my life, I didn't see a family member. I saw a threat, a biological hazard. I picked up the phone. I stopped the recording. I walked over to the front door and opened it wide. Get out, I said. She stood there, smirking. I'm just saying. Kennedy, think carefully before you... I said get out, I shouted, the volume of my voice making her jump. You do not threaten my son. You do not use him as a pawn. You are done here. She looked at my face. She saw something there that she hadn't seen before. It wasn't the sister she could bully. It was the mother who would tear her throat out. She grabbed her purse. You are making a mistake, she said, walking to the door. You are going to die alone. Just like Mom. I slammed the door in her face. I locked the deadbolt. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. My heart was hammering like a bird in a cage. But I didn't collapse. I didn't spiral. I went to my laptop. I drafted an email to Elliot Vance. I attached the audio file of our conversation. Elliot, she just threatened to call CPS. Please file the demand letter immediately. Include the ledger pages. Include the recording. I want a restraining order if possible. I hit send. Then I went to the fridge and poured a glass of juice. My hands were shaking. But it was adrenaline, not weakness. 2 hours later, my phone pinged. It was an email from Blair. Subject: family dinner. I opened it. It was CC'd to Aunt Sarah, Cousin Mike, and 3 other relatives. Hi family, there has been so much tension lately, and I feel terrible about it. I want to clear the air. I am hosting a dinner on Saturday at Aunt Sarah's house. I want us all to sit down, look at the evidence Kennedy claims to have, and talk about this like adults. I have nothing to hide. I just want my sister back. Kennedy, please come. Let's put this behind us. I stared at the screen. She was doubling down. She was inviting an audience. She wanted to stage a trial where she was the judge, jury, and victim. She thought I wouldn't show up. She thought I would be too scared of the public humiliation to attend. She thought the evidence was just me shouting. She didn't know I had the binder. She didn't know I had the timeline. She wanted a stage? I thought about the birthday party. I thought about Leo's confused face when she called me selfish. Okay, Blair, you want a stage? I hit reply. I will be there. I closed the laptop. I wasn't going to that dinner to clear the air. I was going to scorch the earth, and then I was going to plant a garden for my son in the ashes. The drive to Fairmont Ridge felt less like a commute to a family dinner and more like a deployment to a foreign theater of war. My passenger seat was occupied not by a bottle of wine or a dessert, but by a 3-inch black binder. Inside that binder was the anatomy of a betrayal, indexed and tabbed with the ruthlessness of a forensic accountant. I parked my car on the street, away from the driveway where Blair's silver convertible gleamed under the streetlights. The house belonged to Aunt Sarah, the matriarch of the extended family since my mother passed. It was a large, stately colonial, with perfectly manicured hedges and windows that glowed with a warm, deceptive yellow light. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I wasn't wearing my usual mom uniform of leggings and a tunic. I was wearing a structured navy blazer and slacks. I looked like I was going to court. In a way, I was. I picked up the binder. It was heavy. I walked up the path. I could hear laughter coming from inside. It was a sound that usually made me feel warm, but tonight it made my stomach turn. It was the sound of people who were comfortable in a lie. I knocked. Aunt Sarah opened the door. She was wearing an apron over her floral dress. Her face flushed from the heat of the oven. "Kennedy!" she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that felt stiff. "We were worried you weren't coming. Everyone is in the living room." She looked at the binder in my hand. Her smile faltered. "Did you bring work?" she asked. "Something like that." I said. I walked into the living room. There were 8 people there. Cousin Mike, who worked in real estate, his wife, Jenny, Uncle Bob, 2 other cousins I only saw at funerals, and in the center of the room, sitting on the plush beige ottoman with a glass of red wine in her hand, was Blair. She looked up as I entered. She was wearing a soft pink dress that made her look young and vulnerable. She smiled, a sad, brave little smile that she directed at the room before landing on me. "Hi, Kennedy," she said softly. "I am so glad you came." The room went quiet. All eyes were on me. I could feel the judgment radiating off them like heat. To them, I was the unstable sister. I was the one who had snapped at a birthday party. I was the one harassing the grieving daughter. I didn't smile back. I walked to a high-backed chair in the corner and sat down. I placed the binder on my lap. "Hello, Blair," I said. The air was thick enough to choke on. Aunt Sarah clapped her hands nervously. "Okay, dinner is almost ready. Why don't we just chat?" Blair took a sip of her wine. She set the glass down on a coaster with a delicate clink. "I think we should talk about the elephant in the room," Blair said, her voice trembling slightly. "I invited Kennedy here because I want us to be a family again. I hate this fighting. I hate that we are at each other's throats over scraps." She looked around the room, gathering sympathy. "Kennedy has been having a hard time," she continued, looking at me with pity, "and I get it. Being a single mom is so hard, and losing Mom, we all grieve differently, but Kennedy, you have to stop attacking me." I said nothing. I kept my hand on the binder. "You have been calling my phone, leaving angry messages," Blair said, improvising freely. "You went to the storage unit and harassed the manager. You are obsessed with this idea that there is some secret fortune Mom left behind." She laughed. A short, tragic sound. "We all know Mom didn't have money," she said. "She died with nothing. I was the one who paid for the cremation. Kennedy, I was the one who dealt with the landlord. You were grieving. I protected you from the ugly details, and now you are punishing me for it." Cousin Mike nodded solemnly. "That is true. Kennedy, Blair really stepped up back then. I felt the anger spike, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down. I needed to be ice. Is that how you remember it, Blair?" I asked. My voice was calm, uncomfortably calm. "Yes," she said, her eyes flashing. "That is the truth. Just like at the birthday party. You were so stressed, cutting that cake, making everything about yourself, and when I tried to make a joke, you exploded. You are projecting your guilt onto me." She looked at the family. "She called me a thief," Blair whispered, wiping a tear from her cheek. "My own sister." The room murmured. Aunt Sarah looked at me with disappointment. "Kennedy, really," Sarah said, "we can't have this. You need to apologize." I waited. I let the silence stretch until it was painful. I let them believe they had won. Then, I opened the binder. The snap of the rings was loud in the quiet room. "I am not here to apologize," I said. "I am here to correct the record." I pulled out the first document. It was the timeline I had created. "Blair," I said, looking directly at her, "you just said you paid for the cremation." "I did?" she said. I turned a page. I held up a photocopy of a bank statement. "This is my bank statement from November 4 years ago." I said, "It shows a transfer of $2,000 to the funeral home. I paid for it. You told the family you paid for it, but the money came from my account." Blair blinked. I reimbursed you." I turned another page. "My bank records show no incoming transfers from you, ever." I didn't stop. I kept the rhythm steady. You said Mom died with nothing. I continued. You filed a small estate affidavit with the county court 3 years ago. I held up the certified copy with the court seal. You swore under oath that her assets totaled $4,000, and you listed yourself as the only heir. The room shifted. Uncle Bob leaned forward, squinting at the paper. You listed yourself as the only heir? Bob asked. But Kennedy was right there. It was a mistake, Blair snapped, her voice rising. It was a paperwork error. I didn't have a lawyer. I turned the page. It wasn't a mistake, I said, because at the same time you filed this, you were paying the monthly fee on a storage unit at Hollowgate Storage, Unit 404. Blair stood up. This is ridiculous. I am not listening to this. Sit down. Blair, I said. I wasn't shouting. I was commanding. She hesitated, then sat, her face pale. In that unit, I said, I found a ledger. I held up the photocopy of the black book. This is Mom's handwriting. I said, it lists loans she gave you over 5 years. It totals nearly $15,000. And the last entry? It says you took $2,000 from her wallet while she was sleeping. A gasp went through the room. Aunt Sarah covered her mouth. That is a lie, Blair screamed. She was forging that. Mom was senile. She didn't know what she was writing. I turned the page again. And this, I said, my voice dropping to a hush, is a letter from First City Savings. It confirms a payable on death account Mom set up for my son, Leo, $12,000. She sold her land in Kentucky to fund it. I looked at Cousin Mike. You remember the land, right, Mike? You told me Mom lost it in the bankruptcy. Mike looked uncomfortable. That is what Blair told me. Blair told you that because she borrowed the money from Mom the week after the sale. I said, I held up the loan note with Blair's signature. She borrowed Leo's inheritance. She never paid it back, and then she filed a false affidavit to make sure I never found out the debt existed. I closed the binder. She stole from her mother. I said to the room, she stole from her nephew. And she used your sympathy to cover her tracks. The silence was absolute. It was the silence of a worldview shattering. Blair was trembling. Her face was a mask of pure, distilled rage. You, she hissed. You petty, jealous little. She lunged. It happened fast. She launched herself from the ottoman, reaching for the binder on my lap. Her fingernails were claws. I didn't move. I didn't have to. Uncle Bob stood up and caught her arm. Blair, he shouted. Stop it. She struggled against him. Her face twisted. Give it to me. Those are my papers. She stole them. I stood up slowly. I held the binder against my chest. These are copies. Blair, I said, the originals are with my attorney, Elliot Vance, along with the audio recording of you threatening to call Child Protective Services on my son. I looked at Aunt Sarah. She told me she would have Leo taken away if I didn't stop asking questions. I said, Sarah looked at Blair. Her face was gray. You threatened the boy? Sarah whispered. He is not safe with her, Blair screamed. Losing all control. She is crazy. She is obsessed. Then, from the corner of the room, Cousin Mike spoke up. His voice was heavy. Blair, he said. Blair stopped struggling. She looked at him. You told me Kennedy took the life insurance. Mike said, What? Blair breathed. After the funeral, Mike said, looking at his hands. You came to my office. You were crying. You said Kennedy took the life insurance policy and left you with all the debt. You said you were going to lose your condo. Blair's eyes widened. She shook her head. Mike, don't. I wrote you a check, Mike said, his voice rising. $5,000. I wrote it to you personally because you said Kennedy would take it if I wrote it to the estate. He looked at me. There was no life insurance. Was there? Mike asked. No, I said. Mom didn't have life insurance. Mike stood up. He looked at Blair with a look of pure disgust. You lied to me, he said. You stood in my kitchen and cried about how greedy your sister was, and you took my money. Blair looked around the room. She saw no allies. She saw only the wreckage of her own lies. She had lost the audience, so she did the only thing she knew how to do. She went for the jugular. She pulled away from Uncle Bob. She straightened her dress. She looked at me with eyes that were black holes. "You think you won?" she spat. "You think this matters?" She stepped closer, her voice dripping with venom. "You are just like her," she said, her voice echoing off the walls. "You are pathetic. You are desperate for attention. You are selfish. Just like your mom." She screamed the last words. "Selfish like your mom." She waited for me to crumble. She waited for the shame to work its magic, the way it had for 30 years. But the magic was gone. The spell was broken. I looked at her. I didn't see a giant. I didn't see a monster. I saw a small, sad woman standing in the ruins of a life she had built on sand. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I simply set the boundary. "Don't speak about my mother like that," I said. My voice was low, steady, and final. "And don't you ever use her name to justify what you did." I turned to Aunt Sarah. "Thank you for the dinner." "Sarah," I said, "I am sorry to disrupt your evening." I turned and walked toward the door. "Kennedy!" Blair screamed behind me. "Come back here. I am not done with you." I kept walking. I opened the front door. The cool night air hit my face. I walked down the path to my car. I heard the door slam shut behind me. I heard shouting from inside the house. I got into my car. I placed the binder on the passenger seat. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. A notification from Instagram. "Blair Morgan mentioned you in a post." I didn't open it. I swiped it away. Then another notification. A text from Elliot Vance. "We have a court date. The judge granted the emergency motion to freeze her assets pending an audit. If she refuses to correct the filings, she is looking at perjury charges." I put the phone down. It was over. The secret was out. The weapon had been dismantled. I drove home. The streets were quiet. When I walked into my apartment, the air felt different. It felt lighter. Maris was on the couch, watching TV. Leo was asleep in his room. "How did it go?" Maris asked. Muting the television, I dropped the binder on the table. "It is done," I said. "Did she confess?" "No," I said. She doubled down. "But the family knows. Mike knows." I walked to Leo's room. I pushed the door open gently. He was sleeping on his side, one arm thrown over his head. He looked so small in the big bed. I walked over and sat on the edge of the mattress. I brushed the hair off his forehead. I had done it. I had protected him. I had secured his future. But more than that, I had broken the cycle. Leo would never grow up hearing that his mother was selfish. He would never grow up thinking that love was a transaction. He would never have to wonder if the truth was something you had to hide in a box. I kissed his cheek. I went back out to the living room. I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. "What are you doing?" Maris asked. "I am making a list," I said. I wrote family circle at the top of the page. I wrote Leo. I wrote Maris. I wrote Daphne. I wrote Elliot. I stared at the paper. It was a short list, but it was a solid list. I thought about adding Aunt Sarah. I hesitated. She had stood by while Blair attacked me. She had asked me to apologize to keep the peace. I put the pen down. Not yet. I would build a new family for my son. A family chosen not by blood, but by behavior. A family where the price of admission was honesty. Blair could have the internet. She could have her hashtags and her victims and her stories. I had the truth. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to Kennedy's story. It has been a journey through the dark corridors of family secrets, and I hope you felt every moment of her fight for the truth. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please leave a comment below with your city or country. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice, resilience, and sweet revenge, please subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. And finally, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Kennedy should ever let her extended family back in, or was she right to close the door? Let me know in the comments in English. Until next time, keep your secrets safe and your truth louder.